What if I told you some of the most iconic black legends in music and film didn't just die from addiction, but were quietly destroyed while the cameras kept rolling? Behind the velvet curtains, beyond the flashing lights, there were syringes, pills, secret payoffs, and photographs Hollywood tried to erase. Images so disturbing they were bought, buried, or burned to protect billion-dollar empires. Tonight, we're exposing 23 shocking photos of black celebrities destroyed by addiction, and the dark system that may have let it happen. Stay with us. Watch until the end. And if you believe the truth deserves to be seen, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because once you see these images, you'll never look at fame the same way again. Valaida Snow, the trumpet that burned too bright. Harlem once called her royalty. On summer nights, when the skyline shimmered in gold and smoke, Valaida Snow would lift her trumpet and set the air on fire. Men removed their hats. Women leaned closer to the stage. She wasn't just a musician, she was a force. A black woman commanding rooms that barely wanted her there, bending brass and breath into something holy. But fame has a backstage no one photographs. By the mid-1950s, the applause had grown louder and colder. Contracts tightened. Expectations sharpened. Long tours. No rest. No room for weakness. Somewhere between the after-parties and the empty hotel corridors, Valaida found a quieter companion. Opium. At first, it softened the loneliness. Then it softened everything. The final image was never meant to be seen. May 1956. A luxury New York hotel suite. Velvet curtains half drawn. Valaida slumped in an armchair, her trumpet case still open nearby. Her face looked waxen, almost sculpted. Eyes open, but vacant. Skin damp with a toxic sheen. The kind of stillness that doesn't belong to sleep. Hours later, the headline would read, "Exhaustion." But exhaustion doesn't leave purple shadows along the neck. It doesn't freeze a smile into a mechanical spasm. And it doesn't require a rushed cremation within 24 hours, before questions can breathe. The industry moved quickly. Records still needed selling. Releases were scheduled. The narrative was polished. A legend had passed peacefully. Only she hadn't. Valaida didn't collapse on stage. She collapsed alone. In a room paid for by the same machine that needed her brilliance but couldn't afford her humanity. Her addiction wasn't born in a vacuum. It grew in the pressure of being extraordinary in a world determined to consume her. The trumpet that once ignited Harlem went silent that night. Not because the music faded, but because the body carrying it had been pushed past its breaking point. And as the smoke cleared, one truth lingered heavier than the headlines. Sometimes the spotlight doesn't save you. Sometimes it's what slowly burns you alive. Joyce Bryant, the woman they turned silver. In the early 1950s, when America was obsessed with perfection wrapped in platinum, Joyce Bryant walked onto the stage like a comet dipped in starlight. They called her the Black Marilyn Monroe. Silver blonde hair cascading under hot spotlights. Skin glowing. Voice smooth as velvet. Audiences didn't just watch her, they stared. But that silver wasn't magic. It was chemical. To maintain that signature color, she was pressured into using high concentrations of silver nitrate, an industrial compound never meant for human skin. It seeped through her scalp, into her bloodstream. Day after day, show after show, the poison accumulated quietly beneath the glamour. At first, it was headaches, then tremors, then pain so sharp it felt like her nerves were humming under her skin. So she did what many artists are taught to do, endure. When endurance wasn't enough, she reached for relief. Opioids dulled the burning. Painkillers steadied her long enough to step into the spotlight. The dosage climbed in silence. The applause never noticed. A backstage photograph from 1953 tells a different story than the magazines ever printed. Joyce sits in a dressing room chair, still in costume. The silver hair is immaculate, the gown flawless, but her eyes are wide and unfocused. Her body slumped, trembling mid-convulsion. A thin layer of sweat glistens across gray-tinted skin. This wasn't stage fright. It was chemical overload. Hollywood knew she was unraveling. But as long as the tickets sold and the image dazzled, the machine kept moving. Stylists perfected the illusion. Publicists shaped the narrative. No one asked how much silver a body could absorb before it began to break. Then, suddenly she vanished. The story sold to the press was spiritual rebirth, a retreat, a calling to the convent. But sometimes walking away isn't about holiness. Sometimes it's survival. Joyce understood something the audience didn't. If she stayed, she wouldn't make it to 30. Her body was failing under layers of poison and prescription relief. The stage that crowned her was slowly consuming her. She left before it could finish the job. Behind every glittering strand of silver was a woman fighting to keep her nervous system intact. And beneath every standing ovation was a truth too dangerous for headlines. Beauty, when engineered by pressure and chemicals, can become a slow execution. Joyce didn't just change her hair. She escaped the fire they were willing to let her burn in. Frankie Lymon, the boy who never got to grow up. He was 15 when the world fell in love with him. Frankie Lymon had a voice too big for his small frame. Bright, electric, impossibly smooth. When he stepped onto a stage, grown men froze. Teenage girls screamed. The industry crowned him a prodigy, a miracle, a money-printing phenomenon. They called him the future. But no one asked what it costs to become a legend before you're old enough to drive. Tour buses replaced classrooms. Nightclubs replaced playgrounds. Contracts were signed in rooms where Frankie was the youngest person and the most profitable. Somewhere along the way, someone handed him something to keep up. To stay energized. To stay sharp. To survive the pace. He was 15. Heroin doesn't announce itself as destruction. It whispers relief. For a child carrying the weight of adult expectations, that whisper can sound like comfort. The first dose blurred exhaustion. The second erased pressure. Soon, the needle became routine, another tool to keep the show running. By 25, the boy who once danced across stages could barely stand steady under the lights. The final photograph is brutal in its simplicity. February 27, 1968. Harlem. His grandmother's bathroom. Cold tile floor. Frankie lies motionless, a syringe still lodged in his arm. No spotlight. No screaming fans. Just silence. The headlines called it tragedy. A fallen star. A cautionary tale. But look closer. Look at the decade of untreated needle scars trailing down his arm. Look at the gaunt skin stretched thin over a body that never had time to become a man. This wasn't sudden. It was slow. Predictable. Profitable. Backstage footage from his final performances showed the truth long before the bathroom did. Pinpoint pupils under harsh lights. Trembling between notes. A hollow stare where boyish spark once lived. Promoters noticed. Managers noticed. But the tours continued. Because as long as Frankie could still hit the high notes, the machine kept collecting. When he died, the industry mourned loudly. Called him a lost genius. Sold more records. Cleaned up the narrative. What they didn't say was this. A child was handed chemicals to meet adult demands, and no one pulled him back when the abyss opened. Frankie Lymon didn't just lose a battle with addiction. He was never given a fair chance to grow up without it. Dinah Washington, the queen who was never allowed to rest. They called her the Queen of the Blues. Dinah Washington didn't just sing, she commanded. Her voice could cut through a crowded room like a blade wrapped in silk. On stage, she stood tall, draped in sequins and confidence, delivering high notes that felt effortless. The world saw power, control, precision. But behind the curtain, control was an illusion. By the early 1960s, the industry had reshaped her into something marketable, thinner, sharper, camera-ready. Weight mattered. Appearance mattered. Endurance mattered more than sleep. To meet impossible standards, she was introduced to a quiet arsenal, high-concentration diet pills to stay slim, tranquilizers to calm the crash, stimulants to rise again. A chemical rhythm disguised as discipline. In December 1963, the final image shattered the fantasy. Inside her home, the room was not peaceful. It was chaotic. Sweat-soaked sheets twisted around her body. Empty pill bottles scattered across the nightstand like fallen soldiers. Sedatives. Weight loss tablets. Tranquilizers. the residue of a body pushed beyond balance. The official story moved quickly. A stroke. Natural causes. But strokes don't leave behind dozens of empty vials. They don't explain the tremors that had plagued her backstage for years. The constant dry mouth. The glazed stare minutes before walking into blinding light to deliver flawless notes. Backstage photos reveal something different from the album covers. Dinah gripping a glass of water between songs, hands subtly shaking. Face slightly swollen from chemical retention. Eyes unfocused for a fraction of a second before the mask returned. She was managing a storm inside her bloodstream while the audience applauded the calm. Hollywood knew her heart was strained. They knew the cocktail she relied on. But contracts were unfinished. Tours were booked. The image of a composed queen was too valuable to interrupt. So when she was found unresponsive, the room was cleaned before the press arrived. Bottles removed. Narrative tightened. Legacy polished. Dinah Washington died in a house full of silence, not because her voice failed, but because her body could no longer survive the substances meant to keep it stage ready. The queen was never weak. She was exhausted. And in an industry that demands perfection, exhaustion is often treated not as a warning, but as a problem to medicate. Her crown never slipped, but the chemicals beneath it slowly crushed her heart. Lee Morgan. The night the trumpet fell silent. Lee Morgan played the trumpet like he was arguing with God. By his early 20s, he was already a prodigy. Sharp suits, sharper notes, a presence that made smoky jazz clubs feel electric. When he lifted that horn, the room leaned in. The future of jazz wasn't coming. It was already standing under the lights. But brilliance burns fast in rooms that never close. The touring was relentless. The clubs endless. The expectations suffocating. Somewhere between standing ovations and lonely hotel nights, heroin slid into the picture. At first, it softened the edges, took the pressure off, quieted the chaos in his head. Then it tightened its grip. By the early 1970s, Lee's talent was still undeniable, but the body carrying it was fraying. There's a photograph taken the night everything unraveled at Slug's Saloon in 1972. It doesn't show a triumphant musician. It shows a man drifting somewhere else. He stands in an elegant suit, trumpet in hand. But his eyes are vacant. Pupils shrunk to pinpoints under the club's dim lights. His skin looks gray beneath the flash. Along his wrists, faint tracks trace a history no publicist could erase. Moments later, after an argument with his common-law wife, a gunshot cut through the music. The headlines would frame it as jealousy. A lover's quarrel turned deadly. A tragic crime of passion. But that single image before the shot tells a deeper story. Lee wasn't just a man caught in a fight. He was a nervous system running on fumes. A body flooded with chemicals, oscillating between euphoria and collapse. Years of injections had hardened veins, blurred instincts, sharpened tempers. Addiction doesn't excuse violence, but it explains fragility. Hollywood didn't want that narrative. A clean story preserves catalog value. A scandalous addiction complicates it. So the focus stayed on the bullet. Not the needle. On the argument. Not the years of visible decline. On the spectacle. Not the system that watched him deteriorate while albums still sold. Lee Morgan died on a club floor, blood mixing with spilled drinks, the trumpet finally slipping from his grip. But long before that gun went off, something inside him had already been hollowed out. They mourned the fallen genius. They never admitted how long they'd watched him fall. Because sometimes the final shot isn't the beginning of the tragedy. It's just the last sound in a story that started unraveling years before. Wynton Kelly, the man who played through the collapse. Wynton Kelly didn't need fireworks. He didn't need scandal. He just needed a piano. For years, he was the quiet backbone behind giants. Miles Davis, John Coltrane, legends who trusted his touch to hold the music steady. Kelly's style was fluid, joyful, precise. His fingers danced like they knew something the rest of the world didn't. But joy can be manufactured, and stamina can be chemically forced. The touring never stopped. The sessions ran late into the night. Jazz clubs were thick with smoke, pressure, and expectation. Somewhere along the line between creative fuel and survival blurred. Stimulants to stay sharp, sedatives to come down, painkillers to push through exhaustion. There's a photograph from one of his final performances. At first glance, it looks poetic, a master lost in the music. Head tilted back, eyes half open, fingers resting on the keys. But look closer. His gaze isn't inspired. It's unfocused. The whites of his eyes cloudy. His jaw slack as if gravity itself had grown heavier. Veins on the back of his hands bulge unnaturally, crosshatched with tiny scars. His fingertips tremble, not from emotion, but from strain. He wasn't drifting in artistic ecstasy. He was fighting to stay upright. Witnesses said he looked pale that night, a thin sheen of cold sweat catching the stage lights. His lips cracked and darkened. His posture rigid one moment, collapsing the next. The audience applauded wildly, unaware that the man they adored was battling his own bloodstream. Hours later, he was gone. The explanation was swift. Sudden illness. Natural causes. A hard-working musician who gave everything to his craft. But that framing romanticizes something far darker. Kelly's body had been cycling through chemicals for years. High-dose stimulants to sustain late-night brilliance. Depressants to silence the crash. His nervous system stretched thin. His blood pressure unstable. A final drop too steep for an already exhausted heart. Medical records were sealed. The story polished. Another genius memorialized as dedicated. But dedication doesn't leave needle scars along the veins of the hands that once shaped history. Dedication doesn't paralyze a nervous system under hot stage lights. Wynton Kelly didn't collapse because he loved music too much. He collapsed because he was expected to keep producing it, no matter what it cost his body. The piano keys still carried the echo of his final notes. But the man playing them had already been fading, one chemically extended night at a time. Sonny Stitt, the frame that froze a reputation. On stage, Sonny Stitt was discipline incarnate. A razor-sharp saxophone tone. Tailored suits. Perfect posture. He played with the precision of a surgeon and the confidence of a man who had mastered his demons. Or at least, that's what the audience believed. Offstage, the air was thicker. Late one night on 7th Avenue, beneath the yellow haze of streetlights, the illusion shattered in a single metallic sound, the dry clap of a wallet hitting pavement. Small packets spilled out at the feet of a patrol officer. White powder scattered like evidence waiting to be photographed. And it was. The image is ruthless. Sonny mid-arrest, handcuffs tightening. His face caught in the flash, eyes glossy, pupils constricted to pinpoints. Not fear. Not rage. Just a distant, chemical stillness. The kind of stare that doesn't argue. He shouted that he'd been set up. That someone planted it. That this was retaliation. Some believed him. Many didn't. The photograph had already decided for them. Because pictures don't argue context. They freeze perception. For years, Sonny had battled heroin quietly. Relapses. Comas. He'd cleaned up, fallen again, clawed back. The industry tolerated it as long as he showed up sharp, as long as the sax still sang. Addiction was inconvenient, but manageable. Until it wasn't. That single image became louder than any note he ever played. Promoters hesitated. Headlines whispered. Even after he was released for lack of solid evidence, the damage lingered. A reputation doesn't need a conviction to crack, it only needs doubt. Was he framed? Was he slipping again? The truth blurred. What remains undeniable is this. By the time that flash exploded in his face, Sonny's body had already carried years of chemical warfare. The narrowed pupils. The flattened effect. The subtle tremor in his stance. These weren't rumors. They were physiological footprints. Hollywood didn't destroy the photo. They didn't need to. Sometimes the system protects itself not by hiding an image, but by letting it circulate just enough to redefine a man. Sonny Stitt survived that night. He continued to play, continued to fight, but the frame never disappeared. And in the end, it wasn't just a photograph of an arrest. It was a reminder that for black artists walking a tightrope between brilliance and suspicion, one flash can rewrite an entire legacy. Hampton Hawes. the elegance that hid the scars. Hampton Hawes looked untouchable. On stage, he carried himself like royalty, crisp long-sleeve shirts, polished cufflinks, posture straight as a cathedral column. His piano lines were clean, intelligent, impossibly alive. Critics praised his refinement. Audiences admired his discipline. He appeared controlled, elevated, above the chaos that swallowed so many others. But the elegance was armor. Beneath those carefully pressed sleeves were maps no one was meant to see, raised, darkened tracks along hardened veins. Years of heroin injections had turned his arms into a battlefield. When the veins in his forearms began to collapse, he searched elsewhere. Between toes, along the groin, anywhere the needle could still enter without betraying him under stage lights. A backstage photograph reveals the contradiction. Hampton leaning casually against a railing, eyes open wide, sweat clinging to his temples. At first glance, he looks intense, immersed in thought before performing. But look closer. His pupils are shrunk to pinpoints. His skin carries a pale gray undertone beneath the makeup. His fingers tremble subtly as they grip the rail, not in anticipation, but in effort. He wasn't posing. He was stabilizing. The heroin didn't make him reckless. It made him functional, or so it seemed. It kept the withdrawal at bay long enough to perform, long enough to fulfill contracts, long enough to keep the illusion intact. Managers knew. Labels knew. They adjusted camera angles to avoid close-ups of his hands. Wardrobe insisted on sleeves even in suffocating heat. The image of a clean genius was too valuable to fracture. But chemicals always collect their debt. By the late 1970s, his body was failing. Circulation compromised. Organs weakened. What once felt like creative fuel became a chain tightening around his bloodstream. When he died in 1977, it was framed as decline. Natural causes. The slow erosion of time. But time didn't leave those scars. Addiction did. Hampton Hawes was not a caricature of excess. He was a man trying to survive pressure that never loosened. An artist expected to remain brilliant while privately unraveling. The cuffs hid the damage. The piano masked the tremor. Until nothing could. He played through the pain. Through the injections. Through the slow collapse of his own veins. And when the music finally stopped, the world remembered the elegance. Few remembered the cost hidden beneath it. Grant Green, the clean sound, the dirty secret. Grant Green's guitar tone was surgical, precise, logical, almost mathematical in its clarity. When he played for Blue Note, the notes lined up like soldiers, disciplined, controlled, immaculate. Fans believed that kind of sound could only come from a steady mind and steady hands. But discipline on vinyl doesn't always mean discipline in life. In 1965, a black and white tabloid photo detonated his image overnight. It didn't show a master in command. It showed Grant slumped behind a dimly lit club, equipment scattered around him. Suit wrinkled, tie loosened, face drained of color. His hands, the same hands that sculpted pristine jazz lines, trembling violently as he fumbled with his cufflinks. The official explanation came fast: exhaustion. 48 hours of recording. Overwork. Most of the public accepted it. They needed to, but the camera had caught details no press release could erase. His pupils narrowed unnaturally under minimal light, a sign of recent opioid use. His skin carried an oily sheen despite the cold alley air. Between his fingers, faint swelling and bruising hinted at something more invasive than fatigue. And then came the follow-up images. Prescription slips. Witness accounts of him disappearing between sets for 15 minutes, returning euphoric, hyper-focused, then drained again. Grant wasn't chaotic. He was compartmentalized. On stage, he was precision. Off stage, he was dependent. The heroin didn't erase his talent. It coexisted with it. Helped him manage the grind. Quieted anxiety. Smoothed the crash between endless sessions and tours. Until the line between enhancement and entrapment disappeared. Record executives saw the signs. They also saw sales numbers. So the narrative shifted. The tabloid was sensational. The image misleading. The rumors exaggerated. Mainstream outlets softened the story. The records kept spinning. But addiction leaves fingerprints the camera can't fully blur. Grant's later years carried the weight of that secret. Veins hardened, nerves damaged, a body quietly eroding beneath the cleanest guitar tone in jazz. Fans heard brilliance. They didn't see the cost of sustaining it. He wasn't a stereotype of excess. He was a man trying to keep up with a machine that rewarded perfection and ignored fragility. Grant Green proved something unsettling. You can sound flawless while falling apart. You can deliver clarity to the world while your own bloodstream is clouded. The music remained pure. The man behind it was fighting a battle no album cover ever revealed. Loletta Holloway, the voice that echoed after the body failed. Loletta Holloway's voice could shake ceilings. It wasn't delicate. It wasn't subtle. It was thunder wrapped in gospel fire, a sound that didn't just fill a room, it claimed it. When she hit a note, you felt it in your ribs. Clubs vibrated. Crowds surrendered. But power on stage can hide decay off it. By the time the final photograph surfaced, the thunder was gone. It was taken outside a rundown Chicago hotel in 2011. No spotlight. No glam squad. Just flashing emergency lights reflecting off cracked pavement. Loletta lay strapped to a stretcher, face swollen, skin discolored beneath harsh camera glare. The once commanding presence now reduced to fragile stillness. The official statement would say heart failure. But the image told another story. Her features were distorted by years of strain. Not just vocal strain, but chemical strain. Decades of high-dose sedatives and opioids had slowly battered her liver and kidneys. The same substances that dulled exhaustion after relentless touring had quietly hardened veins and scarred tissue. Look closely at her neck in that photo. Darkened lines tracing along blood vessels. The kind that don't come from age alone. When peripheral veins collapse, addicts search for deeper access points. It's a brutal progression, one hidden under makeup, wardrobe, and carefully controlled press angles. Inside the hotel room, reports whispered of empty tranquilizer vials scattered across sweat-soaked sheets. The air thick with chemical residue. No orchestra. No applause. Just silence and the hum of paramedics moving too late. Loletta didn't look like a diva in that final frame. She looked exhausted. The industry had long known her voice was both gift and commodity. The more she pushed, the more they booked. The more she delivered, the more they demanded. Chemical relief became routine, something to get through the night, then the next, then the next. Addiction rarely begins with recklessness. Sometimes it begins with survival. By the time her body finally gave in, the machine had already moved on to the next sound, the next sensation. The headlines were brief. The catalog remained profitable. But that last image lingers, not because it shows scandal, but because it shows cost. The voice that once soared above dance floors and gospel choirs ended not in crescendo, but in collapse. Loletta Holloway didn't lose her power. Her body simply ran out of ways to withstand the chemicals that kept the power alive. And when the echo faded, what remained was a question no spotlight ever answers. How long can brilliance survive when the fuel is slowly killing the vessel? Beverly Johnson, the mirror that didn't lie. Beverly Johnson was the face that redefined beauty. Runways paused when she stepped out. Cameras adored her. Magazine covers crowned her as proof that black elegance could command the highest tiers of fashion. She moved with cool precision, effortless, untouchable, luminous. But backstage, the air was different. In the summer of 1977, during preparations for a Paris couture show, a quiet accusation cracked the surface. A fellow model claimed Beverly relied on cocaine to maintain that icy composure, to push through exhaustion, to stay razor-sharp under blinding lights. The industry responded swiftly. The accuser disappeared from major runways almost overnight. Then the Polaroid surfaced. It wasn't meant for publication. A makeup mirror reflection, half obscured by velvet curtains. On the vanity table beside her compact sat a small silver dish, faint white residue catching the light, and a rolled banknote resting too neatly to be coincidence. In the frontal shot, Beverly smiles brilliantly, but in the mirror, her pupils appear dilated, wide beyond natural reaction. her grip on the table edge tight enough to swell the veins in her hand. The telltale tension of stimulant surging through the bloodstream. Cocaine doesn't create beauty. It creates urgency. Backstage, adrenaline can feel like survival. The shows are relentless. The scrutiny unforgiving. One stumble can end everything. A line of powder becomes armor, a chemical shield against fatigue and fear. The official narrative dismissed the image as manipulation, a trick of lighting, a smear campaign. Most of the public chose comfort over confrontation. But mirrors don't invent residue. Beverly continued to shine. The campaigns rolled on. The applause never wavered. Yet that single reflection remains frozen in time. A quiet contradiction between the polished surface and the chemical storm beneath. Sometimes the camera captures glamour. Sometimes it captures the truth hiding beside it. Jamerson, the genius they left behind. Jamerson didn't need the spotlight. He built it. Behind countless Motown hits, behind voices that defined a generation, there was his bass, deep, intricate, unmistakable. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. But his fingers shaped the pulse of an era. Every groove he played carried discipline, imagination, control. Until control began slipping. When trends shifted and labels chased new sounds, Jamerson found himself slowly pushed aside. The phone rang less. The sessions thinned out. For a man whose identity lived inside music, silence became unbearable. That's when heroin crept in. At first, it dulled the humiliation. Then it softened the tremors in his hands. Tremors caused by nerve damage and years of strain. The cruel irony? The very hands that built a musical empire now needed chemicals to function. A photograph taken in a small Los Angeles studio in 1980 tells the unfiltered truth. Jamerson sits slumped over his bass. Not inspired. Not immersed. Just tired. His face hollowed, skin darkened beneath dim lights. Teeth missing. Fingers swollen, purple at the tips, joints stiff and contracting involuntarily. This wasn't artistic struggle. It was deterioration. He mixed alcohol with tranquilizers to steady himself long enough to record. A genius forced to chemically patch his nervous system just to play a few more notes. The industry watched quietly. No rescue. No intervention. Only distant respect for the catalog he'd already delivered. When he died in 1983, the certificate said cirrhosis. Clinical. Convenient. But hospital images showed something harsher. A body emaciated, nearly unrecognizable. A legend who helped define American music passing away nearly penniless, largely alone. Jamerson wasn't loud in his suffering. He simply faded. The bass lines still live on in every replayed record. They sound powerful, steady, eternal. But the man who played them was slowly eroded, not just by addiction, but by abandonment. Sometimes the industry doesn't destroy you publicly. Sometimes it just stops holding you up and lets gravity do the rest. Sarah Vaughan, the note that couldn't save her. Sarah Vaughan's voice was architecture. Rich, layered, impossibly controlled. She could bend a note until it felt suspended in air. On stage, she was divine. Draped in fur, bathed in spotlight, delivering velvet phrasing that made rooms fall silent. But divinity has a breaking point. In 1961, outside a Paris nightclub, a candid photograph shattered the illusion. Sarah is captured mid-collapse on the cold sidewalk. Her body twisted awkwardly, mouth slightly open, eyes unfocused, not dramatic, not theatrical. Just vacant. The explanation came quickly: food poisoning. Exhaustion. A fainting spell. But the image whispered something harsher. Near the private entrance reserved for her, discarded wrappers and paraphernalia were later photographed in a trash bin. Cocaine, used, insiders claimed, to keep her voice sharp and her energy high through punishing schedules. A stimulant to push lungs and heart beyond their limits. Look closely at that Paris photo. Her lips appear unnaturally darkened, tinged with purple, a sign of oxygen deprivation. Her facial muscles slack despite the cold pavement beneath her. Under the fur coat sleeve, faint bruising trails along the vein line of her arm. This wasn't theatrical collapse. It was physiological failure. High doses of cocaine can paralyze the respiratory system, constrict blood vessels, starve organs of oxygen. The same drug that sharpens performance can suffocate the body. Hollywood framed her as resilient, powerful, a woman who could endure anything. But endurance has a chemical cost. Sarah rose again after that night. She continued to perform, continued to deliver perfection. The public saw strength. They didn't see the strain on her heart, the internal war between brilliance and survival. Her voice soared for years afterward, controlled, majestic, unforgettable. Yet that photograph remains frozen, a reminder that even the most disciplined instrument can be pushed too far. A goddess on stage, a fragile human offit. And sometimes, the note that saves the audience is the one that nearly breaks the singer. Raymond St. Jacques, the party where the mask slipped. Raymond St. Jacques carried himself like legacy. Sharp suits, measured speech, the kind of presence that filled award rooms without raising his voice. Hollywood framed him as dignified, controlled, the embodiment of refined black excellence breaking barriers on screen. Then came the party. It was supposed to be a celebration, post-awards, champagne flowing, cameras flashing. But one black and white photograph changed everything. In it, a furious Paul Winfield points directly at St. Jacques. Winfield's face burns with anger. St. Jacques stands opposite him, drenched in sweat, eyes wide and distant. Not defiant, not composed. Just hollow. The tabloids moved fast. The accusation wasn't about rivalry. It was about chemicals. Opium. Cocaine. Stimulants to sharpen performance and dull pressure. Winfield reportedly hissed words that cut deeper than any headline. Your talent is being eaten alive. Most of the public sided with St. Jacques. They saw jealousy. Industry politics. A veteran threatened by rising success. But the photograph held details the naked eye could miss. Under the harsh flash, his pupils appeared abnormally dilated despite direct light, a sign of stimulant flooding the central nervous system. His fingers gripped the edge of a table so tightly the veins bulged unnaturally, yet the hand trembled with microscopic instability. Composure layered over chemical agitation. And then there was the collar, slightly unbuttoned, just enough to reveal a small adhesive bandage along the side of his neck. A placement addicts turn to when the veins in their arms are no longer viable. It was subtle, but cameras are merciless. Hollywood worked quickly to suppress the image. Rights purchased, prints limited. The narrative softened into heated exchange and industry tension. But that frozen moment couldn't be fully erased. Raymond St. Jacques wasn't just a man caught in confrontation. He was a man stretched thin between image and dependency, between pride and pressure, between brilliance and something slowly consuming it from within. The party lights dimmed. The gossip faded. But that photograph remains, not of scandal, but of fracture. A dignified mask slipping for one unguarded second. And in that second, the truth stared back at the lens. 23 legends. 23 photographs. Not just stories of addiction, but stories of pressure, silence, and a system that profited while bodies quietly collapsed. Behind every standing ovation was a bloodstream fighting to survive. Behind every polished headline was a truth edited, buried, or bought. Fame didn't save them. Talent didn't protect them. And silence almost erased them. If this story moved you, if you believe the truth behind the spotlight deserves to be seen, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because the curtain may close, but the shadows are still there,